All right. So the ISO is downloaded. The very first thing you're going to probably want to do is create a VM. So right click on your Proxmox node, click create a VM, and we'll call this, what am I calling my templates? 199, 200, we'll call this 201. All right. Or we'll change the VM ID to 201. We'll call this Debian template. Click next. Right, and then we'll choose the Debian ISO. Make sure we choose the Linux kernel. Click next. Make sure you click the QEMU agent button. Click next. This is on a ZFS pool. Go ahead and click right through. I click right through because this is actually a SSD back pool. So right through is important to make sure discard is done when the VM commits writes. So let's go here, CPU, right, and this is just this is basically, I'm going to give it one core, default KVM, right? When it comes to creating Linux hosts, or if you're just hosting a Linux service on Proxmox, I'd highly suggest you just use an LXC, right? I very rarely actually use Linux virtual machines. And the reason for that is it's easier just to spin up an LXC, especially if I know the service it's going to be running isn't going to be moving between nodes, or especially if I know the service that the Linux host is running, can afford to be down for a couple minutes during the live migration, right? So if you need your service to stay alive even during live migrations, then I'd use a Linux VM. Or if you need to pass through, stuff like GPUs, then I use a Linux VM. Otherwise, I just go with an LXC. It saves you so much time, right? And I am going to make a video on how to create a Proxmox LXC, right? And okay, so as far as the virtual bridge goes, this is virtual bridge 1, right? That's actually the LANs most of these should be in. And then I click next and start after created, confirm, right? So let me verify I got the networking stuff right here. Virtual bridge 2. Hold on. Let's go into network stuff. Oh, it's virtual bridge 0. This is my local LAN. So let's go in here. Let's change this hardware around real quick. Virtual bridge 0. Okay. All right, cool. So now that the Debian ISO is booted up, or whatever Linux ISO you're using is booted up, go ahead and click graphical install. So let's give it a few seconds. Choose English, United States, American English. Let's give it a few seconds. Okay, you can see it's trying to get its IP address via DHCP, right? And it looks like it works. It says network configuration. So name servers are used to look up host names on the network. So this is basically your DNS address. Give me a second here. This should be a DNS server. You go in summary. Um, IO drivers aren't working. God damn it. Okay. We'll just use the default name servers. We'll use Cloudflare's name servers. Right. If you have a hosted domain controller, right, or if you have a local DNS server, I suggest you type that in. This is a basic guide. I don't really care that it's pointing to my local DC for DNS services. So I am just going to, like I said, use Cloudflare's. Let's go back. Shit. Okay. Let's retry. DHCP host name, Debian template. Alright, let's continue. Yeah, it's got to redo this. Alright, name server is 1111, host name is Debian template, domain name, we're not going to bother with that. Alright, and root password. Go ahead and enter your root password. Go ahead and enter your root password, continue. And alright, cool. And choose a password for this user account. right? Of course, the password is always password 123 when you're making one of these. Okay. So when you're setting this up, just click guided use entire disk, right? You don't really want to use LVM, right? Mostly because, uh, well, I mean, I'm not using this virtual machine. Well, I'm not using, well, there's a couple reasons. One, my backing storage ZFS. LVM on ZFS kind of sucks, right? Another reason is this is a template. Basically, this is like a test or it's a quick walkthrough, right? And there's no reason to use LVM. Though LVM is very useful. I used it a couple times, right? Especially when you want to separate your partitions or you want to you know, create like a RAID array or something. LVM is pretty useful for that, especially if you're using like consumer hardware. Let's see. So with this, you can either choose to have everything in one partition. You can have separate slash home partition. You can have a separate slash home var temp partitions. Again, I just keep everything in one partition. I like to keep the VMs as containerized as possible, or like I don't like there being a bunch of partitions inside of my VMs, right? I could easily just go in and add a hard drive or a virtual hard drive, and that would do essentially the same thing. So there's no point in me partitioning the storage pool or the storage on one VM. Right now, if you're using a physical disk, or if you're actually installing Linux onto a physical host, it's very useful, right? Just click continue. Okay, it's going, guys. We're doing good here. So I'll come back when this is done. All right, cool. So at this point, it's basically asking if you want to. Let's bring this down a little bit. Okay. So this point is basically asking if you want to like scan another CD for drivers or other packages to install. We're going to go ahead and click no. Right. Continue. 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 This is going to ask if you have like a web proxy. Continue. We don't. And there we go. It's configuring app. Right. So at this point, we're almost there. Right. After we get this host rebooted. One of the reasons I like Linux hosts more than Windows hosts is they're actually pretty easy to set up, turn into a template, and then redeploy later if you need to. Right? There's a couple more tasks we have to do. Mostly, we want to update the host, right? Get the latest packages. We want to ensure QEMU station is installed and running. And then after that, we also want to copy our SSH keys, right? I'm not going to do that in this video, but I will show you how to copy SSH keys in another video. I feel like that'd be a good idea. Right, once you get your SSH keys copied into the Linux host, you can log into it using, your key pairs. So, continue. All right. So next is going to ask if you want to install some stuff to your system. We're not going to do that. This is a server. The only thing we're going to install is SSH server and standard system utilities. Click continue. Let's let it keep going. All right. And if you notice, this video is probably not going to be too long, maybe like 10-15 minutes tops, whereas my prep a Windows Server video was very long, maybe like 20 minutes, I think, when I was done editing it. Right, and the reason for that is because Linux servers are just kind of easier to set up. Right now, I do like Linux in server environments. I do like it to like run web services and stuff like that. I don't like Linux when it comes to actually running a desktop environment. I don't care what other people say. Linux desktop environments are garbage. They have been garbage for years since I was in high school. There's been very few that I have used, and I have had a smooth or a completely smooth, completely trouble-free user experience, right? And I don't like them. So when it comes down to it, I'd rather use a Windows host for most of my stuff, and then I'd use a Linux host or a Linux servers for hosting my services, right? So let's let it keep going. All right, boys. So I had to step away from the computer for a little bit just to uh, just to get some stuff done. All right, just later on in the night. Let's go ahead and let's get this knocked out. All right. So you just go ahead and it says it asks if you want to install the grub bootloader. You click continue. You select the hard drive. You click continue, and you go ahead and you let the grub bootloader install. Mm. So we'll come back when this is completed. All right, and we're back. So what you do is you go ahead and you click continue. You let the installation finish, and then you let it reboot. What you also might want to do is come into options and change the default boot order. Well, it looks like it's already set to the hard drive. So let's go back to console. Right. All right, cool. Logged in. Let's see if we can ping Google real quick. All right, cool. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to run an apt-get upgrade and an apt-get this upgrade. Um, so sudo isn't installed. All right. So what I just did was I changed to root. I typed in su slash, enter my root password, and now I'm root. Okay. And we installed a sudo so we could elevate our regular user permissions. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to install some utilities. But first, let's run those upgrades. Right, and you go ahead and just let it run for a few seconds. So it's completely up to date. All right, I like to install htop, which is a slightly prettier version of top. All right, I also like to install Ranger, which is a text-based file browser. Right, and then I also like to install QEMU guest agent. So we'll go ahead and we'll let that run. Right. There's a couple simple utilities that make managing this thing a little bit easier. All you really need from that is QEMU guest agent. Right. HTOP and Ranger aren't really needed, but I like to use that for remote management. All right. Next thing you do is you go to hardware, options, guest agent is actually enabled. Let's go into summary, and you can see we can see the IP address of the VM, which means QEMU is properly pulling the information. Right. And then that's it, right? Basically, at this point, this virtual machine is ready to become a template, right? From here, I'd say copying your SSH keys. That's going to be another video, how to copy SSH keys to a Linux VM, right? But for right now, oh, let's see, system. Let's also check and see, status SSHD. Okay. Another thing I just did was made sure that the SSH server was actually running, right? As you can see, it is running. So now what we do is we stop this VM, right? I do notice like Linux VM, well, you're probably going to want to shut it down if you're actually using this in production, right? Stopping the VM is like pulling the plug on your PC. It's not suggested you could lose data, right? So what you really want to do is actually, click the shutdown button and let it slowly power off and go through the shutdown process, right? I just pulled the plug on it because, I mean, this is a test video. So then you convert to template. Right? And now that is a template you can clone, right? You can either make a link clone, which is basically like a thin provision disk, right? It's going to make a copy of the main disk and then create like a separate file for it to store changes in, or you can create a full clone, which will be a completely separate disk, right? The benefit between a thin provision disk or like a link clone and a full clone is that the link clone will take up less space, right? Um, let's go ahead and go with link clone, and then we'll call this 302 and deb temp test, and then we clone it. Right. I know I did promise you guys a video on how to manage Proxmox permissions, and I am working on that. It's actually a complicated subject to talk about, right? Like I find myself struggling, or at least in the test videos I've been doing, I find myself struggling with ways to make it as simple as possible for you to understand. But we'll get there, right? Hopefully we'll have that video out within the next week or two, right? And then there we go. It's as simple as that. Now you have a Debian template, right? And you can get a Debian server booting up in a couple minutes actually, right? So thanks guys for watching this video. As always, guys, like, comment, and subscribe. Um, Please let me know if you have any video ideas, anything you'd like to see me make a video on. I'll be happy to do it. Right? I am still working on a Turbo FZ project. Updates are incoming. I just haven't had time to work on the soldering for the wiring harness yet, but I'm going to start that in the next week or two. And as I work on that, I'm going to start producing videos for you guys. So look forward to that. There's going to be more updates coming. And as always, hope you guys have a great day. Peace.